The lesson.
Oh, yeah.
If around, so at 9, it sounds like at 9 years of age, that's where it's been a pivotal point in your life where shit's obviously happened and there's been some significant change. And then when you've started, running away from your mum's house and hitting the streets and doing the drugs, is that the beginning of, I guess,
the end?
I didn't want to say it that way, but would you say that was the beginning of that?
Oh, 100%, mate. Yeah.
Okay, so then at 9 years of age, that's really where that part of your life has begun. Now, I guess when you talk about, being on drugs and, being on the streets, that obviously comes with like the petty crime. I'm going to, make a assumption that, you were like introduced to like thieving, stealing shit, what they quote as petty stuff. Can you recall like the first time that you did something like that?
The first time I ever broke the law, I was like 7. I put a magazine inside another magazine at a news agency with my father, and when we got back in the car and he realised, he fucking smacked me up there about 5 times, dragged me back in there and made me take it up to the counter and tell him what I'd done. But after he died, it was just an everyday thing, man, to be honest. Stealing from shops, stealing anything. Like the neighbourhood suburb that I moved into wasn't exactly a good suburb. There's a lot of other kids there that were already accustomed and born into that sort of life. So like it just come hand in hand really. Like as soon as I was running away from home, I was surrounded by, other kids that were older than me. And the influence that people have on you when you're in that sort of circumstance is pretty graphic.
Now, I know that before you ended up in prison, you were in juvenile detention.
Yeah.
Now, at what age did you first end up in juvie? Which juvie did you go to? And what is it that you did that got you in there the first time?
So our state's only got one juvenile detention centre. It's called Ashley's Youth Detention Centre. I was 4 days over 11 when I first went to Ashley's, and it was for a heap of car thefts and burnings of the vehicles and things like that.
Now, so that means that at 9.5 or whatnot is when you've started living at your mum's place, and within a couple of years, you're already in juvie.
Yeah. Well, I was almost 10 when I moved in with them. So yeah, within a year, pretty much.
Wow. Okay, so it all escalated very quickly. Now you briefly mentioned there that one of the things that you were doing was stealing cars. To be stealing cars at 10 or 11 is pretty fucking young. I don't even know how you can see over the wheel. Can you recall the first time that you boosted a car and how you went about it and what that experience was like?
Yeah, definitely. You don't really forget your firsts on things like that. I was only 10 years old and accompanied by older males. And we stole the car. It was a four-wheel drive. They actually got the keys from inside the back door of the house. Like they were snooping around. We were snooping around the house and found the keys and whatnot and stole the car. But after that first time, it made things a whole lot worse because, I'd just experienced, that was sort of my transition from breaking into cars and work cars and stealing the property from the vehicle to actually stealing the vehicle and using that to then go on and do more crime.
Now, when you guys did that, you know, that was your first time. Was it a joyride situation?
No. We stole the vehicle to go on and do further crimes. Yeah.
Okay. And can you talk about, once you stole the vehicle, what you guys then were involved with?
I can say in layman's terms, if that makes sense, just aggravated property crimes. So basically the stealings of other motorised vehicles, whether it be motorbikes, four-wheelers, things like that. The break and enter of other properties, whether it be personal, private or business. And yeah, nothing serious at this point, but yeah.
Now, how many times do you think you would have boosted cars between the first time and when you went to juvie? Was it like a very regular thing?
I couldn't give you an exact number, but I'll just say that I've been charged and convicted for every car that I've stolen.
Word up.
Yeah.
So obviously, though, you know, it's happened a few times. You've been charged and convicted for those acts. Now, when you first went to juvie, can you recall what that experience was like on your first day?
Yeah. Yep. Clearly, mate. Ashley Detention Centre, when I first went there, was, you know, it was a very dark and dysfunctional place run by a lot of people that should never have been given jobs there, let alone positions in managerial positions and, you know, coordinator positions and things like that. But yeah, Ashley's was a horrible place, man, for a long time. My first day there, you know, like they were still doing barbaric shit from the moment you step in the door. Like you literally pull in, you get out, they take you into a building, they've got a couple of documents and they're just like, yep, is this your name? Yep, this is your next court date? Yep, all right, come in here. They walk you into a room and they just say, take your clothes off. And, you know, being 11 years old, you just take your clothes off and then they're like, you know, lift your arms up, or they'll say, put your hands on the wall, or you just got to basically have your arms so they can get under your armpits. And yeah, they'll literally just grab this, like they used to have a bucket and like a paintbrush or like a spatula or, you know, something like you do cooking and shit with. And yeah, they'd just get this stuff that they call scabies cream and they'd rub it up your ass crack. They'd put it all over your genitals, under your armpits, in your ears, behind your ear, just any crevices, as they used to call it. Yeah, if you had a foreskin, they'd make you pull your foreskin, and this shit burnt like fuck. Like it wasn't like it was just a cold cream they were putting on you, like it was actually to, you know, destroy lice or whatever it was they were trying to do. But yeah, that's your first 5 minutes in the door. Like you're already stripped naked and, you know, being degraded. Like your whole fucking body would burn from this shit. Like, and they'd make you leave it on for 5 minutes, and they'd even stand, like they tried to get me to stand there and keep answering questions, and I was just like, fuck, I'm burning. Like I'm not, no way, I want to shit. Like get this shit off me. Like, but just, you know, just so behind the times, man. Like,
so you first gone in at 11.
yeah.
So that would mean that this is this is like 2000. Yeah. Okay. So it's like 20 years ago. Now, you know, you talk about first 5 minutes, they're putting this, you know, all this shit in, you know, all over whatever crevice of your body. Once that's done, then what happens after that?
They'd literally just finish the paperwork, take your clothes off you, give you another set of clothes. They walk you down to the building, which was called the New Wing at the time. There was only one building in the whole centre, and it wasn't separated or segregated. whether there was 30 kids or 100 kids or adults, because they used to house people up to the age of 21, 22 years of age back then. But yeah, they'd literally walk you over to the new wing, you'd go through the front door, and they'd put you straight in the timeout room for 72 hours, and that was your induction period, which they used to just call it a watch period, to basically assess your mental health. Great way to assess an 11-year-old's mental health. Lock them in a concrete cell for 3 days with nothing. Like,
That's insane.
yeah.
And so I guess once those 72 hours are up, now I imagine after that is when you start, being around some of the other kids that are in there.
Yep.
How was your initial experience with that whole part of it? To my understanding, when I've spoken to people that have gone to jail, a lot of them say that when you first walk in there, someone's going to test you, and you have to stand up for yourself and have a go. Otherwise, you're fucked for the rest of the time that you're in there. When you first were in juvie and you first start meeting the other kids in there, did you experience similar sort of thing or not at all?
Definitely. I was, as I just said, like only just turned 11. After I was left in the cell where I'd be sleeping, I quickly realised that there was only there was about 4 or 5 people in the whole of Ashley's that I knew, but there was like 2 or 3 of them in the cell that I'd been put in that I actually knew from the outside. So I sort of felt like I was going to be okay, but yeah, that was very quickly ripped away from me in just about every aspect you can imagine.
So can you recall the first time where you had an incident of violence in there?
Yep. I think I'd been out of that observation period, locked in that cell for, it was either a day or a couple of days. And an older inmate was testing me, as you put it, come up to me, asked me if I could fight and whatnot. And I'm just like, I'm 4 foot 1 inch tall, I'm 11. And I was just like, oh, yeah, kind of. And he's like, show me. So we started just mucking around, and then that, I don't remember anything after that. I just remember waking up and there was 10 staff and about 25, 30 inmate or detainees surrounding me, and I could hear everyone screaming and saying, clear the way, the ambulance is here and whatnot. And yeah, I ended up being rushed to the Deloraine Hospital, which was 10 minutes away from the detention centre. And yeah, I think it was 8 or 9 stitches put in the left side of my temple.
And so when you say that, because you're 11 years old, being housed with people up to the age of their early 20s, how much bigger and older was this person?
He was only, because we're actually really good mates now. He swore and declared that he never meant to do it. But yeah, he's only two years older than me. But this individual happens to be single-handedly the toughest man I've ever met. At 13 years old, he was knocking out grown men. He'd knock the workers clean out. If he he was just a freak. He can just fight. He was built like a small Spartan at 13 years old. Skinhead. He just looked like a man at 13. He just didn't look 13 at all.
Yeah, right. And you mentioned that you're friends now, but
yeah.
When you've come back to the boys' home from being taken to hospital, was it all cool pretty much at that point straight away with him, or that relationship had to develop over many years?
Yeah, well, by the time I got back from the hospital, everyone was already locked back in their cells. So I got locked back in my cell after I got back, and the following morning I come out and yeah, me mate come straight to me and was just like, fuck, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that to your boy, rah, how's your head, fucking rah. And then, the obvious question followed after that, what'd you tell him? And I'm like, I just told him I slipped. And he's just, oh, you're a good little cunt, fucking, you know, I'll teach you how to fight, I'll look after you. Do you smoke? Do you do drugs? Like, you know, just, and yeah, it just went from there. Like, we never had an issue after that. But
So basically keeping your mouth shut is what earned his respect.
oh, 100%, yeah.
And now, so at this point, you know, you're 11 years of age. How old were you the last time that you were in juvenile detention?
So I was 4 months over 17, and yeah, I was pretty unhappy to be back at Ashley's. I'd gotten out, I don't know, three weeks before. No, it might have been, it was about 5-6 weeks before this incident, and yeah, I got charged with a heap of serious stuff. Like, I was looking at a very long time, and yeah, when I went back to Ashley's, I was, you know, the staff were taunting me, and they were just making it a really unhappy and healthy place for me personally to be. Like, I was just getting, I was that angry and that overwhelmed by everything that was happening. Yeah, I made the decision to escape, and I escaped and was caught the same day. Like, they got me probably 10k from the detention centre because I just literally jumped the fence and tried to, you know, run away. But yeah, it was probably 3 weeks after that. Like, I'd been locked in my cell every day for 23 and a half hours a day after that escape. But yeah, me and 5-6 of the other boys devised a little plan to escape again, because like I was getting out of there one way or another. And yeah, escaped the second time by getting an officer to slide a book under a couple of cell doors, like during his night checks. And then we made sure that the book wouldn't fit under my door. So like, he slid it to this bloke, slid it to that bloke, and then they're like, oh, can you give it to Caine? And he's tried to slide the book under my door, and it wouldn't fit. Like, it would only fit under a couple of doors. And yeah, I ended up talking him into like undoing the door and giving me the book, like if I went to the back of the room and faced the wall. And yeah, I just, yeah, ended up escaping, like ran and fly kicked the door into his face and whatnot. But yeah, 5 of us ended up escaping, and when me and my mate were recaptured about 2 weeks later, we were both, he's only 11 days older than me, so we were both 17 and a half, more or less. And yeah, basically when they recaptured us, they took us through the Launceston police station, which was just normal. They housed you in the remand centre, like the adult remand centre, before you transferred back to Ashley's, which was just normal. And then yeah, like they locked us in our cells, and the night went, and the next morning come, and we're still there. And like, I ended up saying to one of the officers at the remand centre, I said, what's going on? When are we going? And he just laughed and kept walking and said, you're not going anywhere. He goes, you're going to prison. And I'm like, oh, lovely. Like, that's what we wanted, you know. Like, didn't want to be out there. But yeah, once again, mate, you know, you don't always get what you wish for. That whole excitement of going to prison for the first time was also quickly ripped away from me.
Now, and you know, obviously I'll ask you about that. But you know, talking about at 17 being the last time that you were in juvie, and you mentioned that you were facing some pretty serious charges. Can you say what those charges were? And did you end up being convicted for these charges?
No. Eventually I was found to have no case to answer for all offences, which was, you know, it's the best result a defendant can possibly have in the court of law. Like, once you're charged, especially in the Supreme Court, yeah, there's a clause in the law that says if a judge examines the evidence that the prosecution are bringing against you and they don't find it sustainable enough to get a conviction, they can find that the defendant doesn't have a case to answer for, and they literally let you they drop all the charges and you just walk out the door. And yeah, at the time I was charged with, well, by the time I got to court, I was charged with 6 or 7 car thefts, 6 or 7 aggravated burglaries, 6 or 7 stealings, 6 or 7 burnings of the vehicles that were used in those ram raids, burglaries, robbery for overpowering the Ashley worker and taking like his keys and letting 5 of us escape, 2 counts of escape, an aggravated armed robbery on a gaming venue, and yeah, there was a bit of other shit, but just nothing as serious as those 25, 30 odd charges, but yeah.
Now, what I find, I guess, surprising is that they would charge someone with that much stuff, and then when it comes to the crunch, not have enough evidence or whatnot to be able to see it through, or even attempt to see it through to get a conviction. Particularly when you've escaped not once but twice. That's one of your charges. They know this obviously because they captured you, and they still didn't even convict you for that. How do you think that happened?
Oh, just so we can clear that up. I was eventually, the robbery that I was charged with for taking the keys off the worker was dropped to stealing, because I actually left the keys in the last door that we went out before we jumped the fence. I didn't actually take the keys with me.
Wow, so that makes all the difference in that regard.
Oh, bloody over did, mate. It was either aggravated robbery or stealing, and yeah, my lawyer was able to convince them that I never had the intention of keeping the property, only to use it, not harm it, not break it, not steal it, not sell it, just use it.
Yeah.
And that's what.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, basically all the offences that I was charged with when I went to Ashley's the first time, like before I escaped and then escaped the second time, they were all dropped through the judge finding me having no case to answer. By the time I was ready to be, like by the time those charges were heard in court and they were dropped, I'd already acquired the 2 counts of escape, the robbery.
Okay.
Yeah, the robbery of the keys, and 2 separate riots in the Hobart Remand Centre where they eventually sent us. So
The lesson.
927. Oh yeah.